Okay, good morning. Quick check-in things and housekeeping things. All of your Unit 3 stuff has been graded. So do me a favor and just hop on the grade book in the next day or so and make sure that everything looks the way you expect it to look, especially with the revision quiz. I had someone last section who I had just forgotten to update his score, and he caught it. So double check on the grade book. If something looks weird, just send me an email. Unit 4, your first two assignments are available on Google Classroom. A bunch of people have done the Sonata listening one already, and then there's a rhythm assignment that's already available. Looking ahead, so if you have not perused your syllabus recently, you might not realize that our last synchronous class is not the day before classes end. It's actually a week from today. So we're going synchronously through the 17th. And then your Unit 4 deadline is the 19th. So we don't actually meet on the 19th, but your Unit 4 deadline is that day. That way, if you need to revise anything, you'll still be on campus. You're not going to be worrying about traveling and all of that through that revision period. So that the revision period will end on Sunday, the way it always has. And then, so that's it. So today, Thursday, and next Tuesday are our only 3 synchronous classes remaining. We will get project info out to you after we're done with synchronous classes. So you'll have 3 options for a project. They're all transcription based, and we'll give you the details on that and the parameters and everything via video collection after we get done with synchronous work. So just letting you know that we are down to our final 3 classes. So with that then, we're going to do a quick friendly check-in. So in the chat, either to me or to everyone, on a scale of 1 to 9, I would like to know which cat best represents how you are feeling at this wonderfully chaotic point in the semester. And since you guys are my 3rd class, I will also let you know what the trends were in my previous sections. Maya's got the most popular choice here. Cat 6 has been everyone's favorite today. I think 7 has been quite popular as well. I was telling my class yesterday I was in a really aggressive mood, so I was full on Cat 5 for most of the day. I've defaulted more towards like maybe a 2 for today, but I also like how all of these options are in some state of chaos. There's not a single calm cat on this board. All right, so on tap for today, we are going to work through one last kind of rhythmic idea, and it's the one that you encounter in the Strauss. So, which is your excerpt for assignment 2 for Unit 4. So if you haven't watched that video yet and everything, no worries at all. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. You are speaking and conducting through this rhythm, and it contains pretty much every manner of triplet in a 4/4 framework that we've done thus far, with the exception of it does have one additional triplet figure, and that is what you see in measures 4 and 5 here, which is this idea of a whole note triplet. Now, if you remember when we derived the quarter note triplet like a million years ago, we talked about how it was just 8th note triplets that were paired off. Then we introduced half note triplets, which were just quarter note triplets that were paired off. Now we're talking about whole note triplets, which unsurprisingly are just half note triplets that are tied in pairs. Now, the challenge with these whole note triplets, and to some degree the challenge with the half note triplets that you may have felt, is that as the durations get longer, it gets more challenging to keep track of your subdivisions in an effective way. So for a lot of us, we initially talked about these half note triplets as working off of the quarter note triplet, but then a couple classes after that, we actually backed up and we derived the half note triplets from the 8th note triplet. And in speaking with some of you, that was actually the more helpful way that helped you keep things a little cleaner and a little tighter. my hope is that the quarter note triplets are more comfortable for you now, because we are going to likely use those as our pulse stream for the half note, for the whole note triplets. So in a really kind of shorthand form then, what we're dealing with is, again, this idea of half note triplets that have been tied off in pairs. So we've got these two tied, these two, and then these two. But we are also going to articulate and speak through this in quarter note triplets, which I think is going to be the more comfortable subdivision for a lot of us. So I'm going to sketch them out under here. It's going to be a little crowded looking. But here are 2 bars of quarter note triplets. And just like a regular whole note is comprised of 4 quarter notes, a whole note triplet is comprised of 4 quarter note triplets. So what we're dealing with then is this tying, grouping them in 4s. Now, the reason I'm stopping there and not going all the way down to the 8th note triplet is, if we default all the way back to the 8th note triplet, it gets really unwieldy. Then you're counting in groups of 8, and it just gets, I think, it gets to be more trouble than it's worth. If we can stick with the quarter note triplet as our pulse stream, I think that's going to be our best pathway to getting this to lock in. So what I would like us to do is take a run through this, but I would like us to actually count all of the quarter note triplets. So we've done this a lot in the past, but you are going to continue to articulate this quarter note triple pulse. You'll ta the first line of the blue rhythm entirely, and then you're going to basically count quarter note triplets through that second system. So you'll be counting 1/2s for measure 3, and then you'll be counting in 4s for measures 4 and 5. And I'm hoping that will give you a sense of the grouping. So conducting optional right now, I'm going to be tapping the pulse for most of class. So conducting is optional, but let's take a tempo about here, quarter note about here, and let's ta the top line, count the second line. 1, 2, 3, and a 4. Ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives you a sense of how the grouping is going to work. Now, hopefully, you were counting out loud, so hopefully you had a downbeat on that 3. That's your one kind of anchor when we're subdividing like this that you can latch onto. Can we try it again? Same thing. So conduct or tap a pulse and speak top line, count second line. 1, 2, 3, and a 4. Ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now, I'm going to take us out of measure 3. So we did this in my earlier classes, and it seemed to work really well to kind of bypass measure 3 for right now. So what I would like us to do, we'll do measures 1 and 2. And then we'll jump directly to measure 4 and do measures 4 and 5. The half note triplets in my earlier classes were just kind of getting in the way. So if we have measure 2 going directly to measure 4, we've just got that subdivision kind of right in our faces. So what I would like you to do this time If you haven't tried conducting yet, I'd like you to try conducting this time. So if you were tapping the pulse like I was, try conducting so you can get a sense of kind of where this coordination comes in with the rhythm. Follow the orange arrow. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, can we add some accents? So I just want little accents on the ones, just to sort of start to give you a sense of what that is going to sound like when there's nothing kind of in the middle. So same thing, orange arrows, accents on your ones for the bottom system. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, next step, and this is where it gets tricky because now you've got to start to consider subdividing inside of your head. I was telling my other classes, and this seemed to work pretty well, is we are going to actually temporarily make these rhythms kind of staccato-esque down here. So we're still going to follow the orange arrows. And the reason we're going to do that, now if we're in a class all together, that's a tactic I use in class all the time to make sure that that we're not faking anything. So if we do rhythm staccato, it forces them to be very, very precise. What I'm doing with this now by having you do them staccato-ish is that leaves you some space to still find a way to subdivide in a vocal way if you need that. So for me, I still do things vocally when I'm doing these staccato rhythms, just to continue having that subdivision going. So try this now. So we're going to not count anymore. We're going to ta everything, follow the orange arrows, and staccato-ish on the whole note triplets. And let's see how you do. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ta, 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 ta. Okay. Let's do this. I want you to still ta. I'm going to count out loud. So you'll hear me subdividing for you for measures 4 and 5. So you just ta, I'll count. From top, orange arrows. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now, as you're looking at the Strauss, when you get to it, there's one of the passages that you're dealing with does pretty much exactly this. It just takes triplets and continually augments the rhythmic value. So you've got quarter note triplets that turn into half note triplets and then turn into these whole note triplets. So I think what I might actually do is bring that in on Thursday or Tuesday so that we can just work on it together. Since everyone has to do it, I'm fine to take some time to just work on it as a group. But in the meantime, if you want to start looking at it, you now have kind of a practice regimen to get you through that. So you don't feel like you have to just jump into it and immediately be able to ta and conduct through it. Take this pathway. So take the time to work through quarter note triplets and then maybe half note triplets, or work through quarter note triplets and then count the quarter note triplets. Anything to sort of help work that out. You can record yourself counting the subdivisions and play that underneath, play that while you're tying the rhythm, so that you have that kind of consistent feedback, like what happens when I count at you while you're speaking the rhythm. So we will table that for now. We'll come back to it on Thursday, and we'll spend some more time with it, either in the capacity of the Strauss or something like this. The other thing I have for today that's going to take us through the end of the hour is actually from your course pack. So if you have a hard copy course pack and want to turn to page 17, that's where we're coming from. So we're going to do a sonata form exposition, but I do want you to have the score in front of you because this exposition's a little bit unusual. So I would like you to kind of use eyes and ears on this one. If you're looking at it, it is quite short. The exposition itself is only 38 measures. So you can see by the repeat sign where the end of the exposition is. And if you've done assignment 1 already, the listening, this is the same composer as one of the pieces on assignment 1, I believe. We're going to listen through this, and same kind of things that I've been asking you to listen for, that I was asking you to listen for last week. Transition, medial caesura, EEC. The challenge is that there are a lot of funky sort of non-normative things that go on with this. So you might on first listen find that you have no idea where any of those things are. And that is totally fine. As we're, so the ensemble that I found, there are tons of just kind of regular old string quartets that do this. But I found this incredible ensemble that is part of a larger orchestra. And this is actually this has been revoiced. So instead of a standard string quartet now, we have violin, viola, cello, and string bass. So it's going to sound a little different timbrally than what you're used to. But it's a really fun group, really great performance. They're a lot of fun to watch and listen to. So let's give this a first pass. You can mark your score if you want, but we're going to listen to it plenty of times. So here you go. Okay, so that's a first listen for you. Now let's go back. I'm going to play it again. And a couple things to think about before I just sort of like cut you loose to figure things out. So we're obviously starting in G minor. Minor mode sonata is similar to minor mode binary forms. You can expect a lot of times the second theme area or the second key area rather than the dominant to be the relative major. Now that poses an interesting conundrum because the sonatas that we listened to last week, I kept saying listen for sharp 4 to be kind of your signal that we're moving towards the new key area because we were going to the dominant. With relative minor and a major, you're listening instead for something else. They share every note. That's sort of the cool part about their relationship. The thing instead to listen and look for, though, is the absence of the G minor leading tone. So that's going to be your big signal that we have left the primary theme area when we lose that F sharp. So that's one thing to listen and look for is the release of the F sharp, lots of F naturals. That is our signal that we are now moving ourselves toward our secondary theme in B flat major. So that's thing number 1 to look and listen for. Thing number 2, maybe listening for the medial caesura might get you into a little bit of trouble because it's not nearly as clear as the Mozarts we listened to last week. So maybe instead kind of trust your melodic gut and just see if you hear a moment where you think, ah yes, that's the beginning of a theme area. To hear where the secondary theme might begin. We can find the medial caesura from that sort of information. So let's take another listen and see what you come up with for those things. Here you go. Okay, let's tackle transition first. So starting in G minor, we've got tons of F sharps floating around because that's what gives us our dominant, the proper quality. So lots of F sharps. And then I'm actually going to bring your focus right into the second violin line on the second system. So we get an F sharp in measure 6. And then immediately on the downbeat of 7, it turns into an F natural. And that F natural just never goes away. So we introduced F natural there, and look how it's being kind of treated as a pedal tone for several measures. More often than not, when we're kind of in harmonically transitional spaces, one of the best ways that we can signal our new key is with a dominant pedal. That's a hallmark way of saying, like, this, we're about to establish this key, here's its 5. So downbeat of 7, we encounter this F natural that just stays there. And look at what the first violin is doing above it. Arpeggiating B flat, and arpeggiating what in essence is an F dominant. Here we've got F, E flat, C, and then in measure 8 we get F, C, A. But in essence, we are going between B flat major and F dominant over and over in this passage on the second system. So this is about as big of an announcement as we can get that we are going to B flat major. Two things are unusual about that in terms of sonata form context. One is that we're in measure 7. That is extraordinarily early to be just like jumping ship from the primary theme. So we got 6 measures of the G minor primary theme, and then we're off. Bunch of F naturals, we're going to B flat major. That is really early on in the piece to be doing that. So that's unusual thing number 1. Unusual thing number 2 is let's look at the cadence that precedes that moment. And one thing we talked about last week is that we expect primary theme, peck, then transition. What we get instead here, so let's look from the beginning of the primary theme. We get this nice kind of consistent phrase structure. We get a half cadence at the end of this antecedent phrase. And then we start the consequent phrase at measure 5, back on 1. We're still on 1 on the downbeat of 6. And then the other 2 harmonies in 6 give us what actually is a tonicized half cadence. So we get a 7, 6, a 5 that goes to 5, which is a fine cadence to have, but we're not expecting that to be the last cadence we hear in the primary theme space. So we end our primary theme with a half cadence. And then the second violin and first violin pretty much announce with those F naturals that we're gone. Now we're moving into B flat major. So in terms of formal labels then, we've got our primary theme, which is just from the beginning. So there's our primary theme space. And then our transition starts on the downbeat of 7. As odd and early and unprepared as it may be, that is just where it starts. Now our next job is to figure out where the secondary theme starts and kind of work backwards from there to find the medial caesura. So we're going to listen one more time, and I would like you to mark on your scores or jot down or just remember two different things. One is where you think the secondary theme begins, and the second thing is where you think the EEC is. So the EEC is your pack in your new key that's not followed by any secondary theme material. And we had a big discussion on that on Thursday with the Mozart that had like 5 cadences in it. But you're listening for a pack in your new key of B flat major to tell you where the EEC is. So this is from the beginning again. Here you go. Okay, now, so let's talk secondary theme. I'm going to go back to the first page. So we get our transition that immediately kind of establishes us in B flat. There's very little transitioning going on. We're in B flat, and there's not a lot of discussion that takes place. Starting in measure 7, there we are. Now, as we are getting to the end of this page, I want to kind of bring your attention to the very last measure of the page. So as we're moving through here, we're in B flat. We've got a nice 4 chord here in our new key. We had a 1-6 here. So this is all B flat major now. 1-6, 4, and then right here, we get, with this E natural, we get this little 5 of 5 that goes to 5 of our new key. 1 down to 7 in the first violin. So that this sort of half cadence sound at that moment, I think, is really, really quite clear. And then when we jump back in the next downbeat, we get new material, and material that I think is kind of announced and repeated multiple times to sort of confirm that this is our new theme area. So your secondary theme begins at 15. Which puts your MC like right there. If you blink, you miss it. So this is not, again, with the Mozart, we had these very kind of pronounced textural breaks at the medial caesura. We don't really get that here. The viola plays right through it. So if you aren't like super tuned in and looking and listening for it, you could absolutely miss it. One thing that I don't think I spent a ton of time on last week is the idea of the cadence that precedes the medial caesura. So more often than not, the cadence that happens right before the MC is a half cadence in your new key. So your transition's goal is to get you into your new key, but its goal is not to close out and kind of wrap up the new key. So rather than ending on a pack, your transition usually ends on that nice open half cadence. That invites the secondary theme to then come in and really strongly announce its presence and announce the fact that it is definitely secondary theme time in our new key. So half cadence in B flat, medial caesura, secondary theme kicks off. And your secondary theme from a phrase structure standpoint, super, super textbook. So we have basic idea, we have a BI prime that's down the octave, we get this continuation that's pretty much just fragmentation of the idea. So I think that Boulogne goes to a lot of trouble to kind of saturate the secondary theme with these motivic units to make us really clear that that's what's going on. So we end there on a half cadence. And then we kind of repeat the continuation. So we get this 4-bar repetition of the continuation. I'm going to call it continuation prime. And it sounds like we are setting up for a nice pack and for our EEC. We have a big old cadential 6/4 to 5. We've got a trill on scale degree 2 in the uppermost voice that we really want to go down to 1 to round out a nice pack. And instead it steps up to 3, which, I mean, it's still a cadence in B flat, right? We still get an IAC, but it's a little bit of a buzzkill. We really want that 2-to-1 motion, a nice kind of firm cadential closure there. Instead, we move up to scale degree 3 to give us an IAC. We have this phrase elision that happens right here on the downbeat. So right at this moment where we get the cadence, everyone gets really loud, and the first beat of this next phrase kind of swallows up the cadence anyways. So even if we were to kind of consider it an EEC, it feels and sounds so much more like the beginning of the next phrase instead. And then as you get to the bottom of the page, this is actually old material. So our transition material comes back. That transition that didn't transition at all, that just plopped right into B flat. That same material comes back at the very end of the secondary theme. And here is your nice pack in B flat. So your EEC then comes right at measure, what is that, 30, 31, 2, 3, 34 is your EEC. And that makes these last 4 measures your closing zone. So 38 measure long exposition. 38 measures shouldn't be able to get into this much trouble, but there are lots of kind of little oddities that happen in those 38 measures that really make you consider what are the markers of this form and what things can we play with to make it ambiguous or make it more interesting. Okay. On Thursday, we'll play around with some more rhythms. We might do a little bit of dictation. I haven't decided yet, or we might look at a different sonata. I have not yet made up my mind. But like I said, check out Gradebook if you haven't already on Google Classroom, just to make sure I didn't screw anything up. If I did screw something up, please email me and I will fix it appropriately. Otherwise, I will see you guys on Thursday.